And welcome back to episode number 55 of Raise the Banner podcast. It's your three co-hosts as usual. JR is still MIA. He's living his life down in Florida. I'm sure he'll be back at one point or another. But for tonight, as usual, Zach Brewitt, Benny Ballgame, myself, Matt Couture here. Let's jump into it, boys. Drake May, Patriots, London got their ass kicked, embarrassed. Drake May looked kind of good. I don't know. What are your overall thoughts, Zach? How did the London game go, and what are you feeling right now?
I mean, it started out good. It started out like it was, going to be kind of a turnaround game for the Patriots, and then wheels kind of fell off. I don't know what it is with Jalen Polk. I was super high on him coming out of college. I thought he could be, pretty good. But it's the on the field stuff, him falling down on that 2-point conversion, him missing and dropping balls, and then him like being overly aggressive about how good he is and how he thinks he is. So I don't know what's up with him. Defense continued to just be porous and look terrible. I think DeMarcus Covington is not a good defensive coordinator. And I'm sure we'll get into this later, but Gerard Mayo, after the game, is continuing to prove that he was probably a premature hire last year. And he continues to prove that he doesn't necessarily have a grasp on the media or the locker room, and it spells disaster whether he sticks around or not, or whether they have a shakeup at the end of the year in terms of whatever. I don't think it's going to happen, but that's the talk on the radio today. The game overall, I thought Drake May got a good. The throw to KJ Osborne was got a nice touch to it. He looks good. Keyshawn Boutte continues to show that he might be what we all thought Jalen Polk would be. But yeah, overall, just started out really good and fizzled out rather quickly.
That's good way to put it. Ben, how about you?
Yeah, fizzled, I think, is putting it delicately. I'm with Zach about the game. Obviously, it started out great. Opening drive, touchdown. Held the Jags in check early. Obviously, they were up 10-0 in the first. I know it was in the first half. Maybe it was in the first quarter too. But yeah, the game, started well, ended just as bad. Obviously, rough sequence again for the defense. I get that they're riddled with injuries, but they just don't really seem to have it mentally. They don't feel checked in. Matt and I know you and I talked about this, one-on-one. Drake May looked good, but I put it with a little bit of an asterisk. I thought that, this is both games, but I feel like a lot of his production has come when the game doesn't really matter. So I'd love to see, hopefully he can keep that up in a competitive situation. It would be nice if they could be in a competitive situation more than they have to obviously through 7 games. But, kind of more of the same. There was certainly a glimmer of hope in the beginning, and then obviously the wheels fell off. Punt return touchdown. You had the penalty on the extra point that moved the ball closer. Jags go for 2 instead of just getting the conventional 1. I thought, they held him. Odd decision by Peterson to go for it when you're up 15 late in the game. And then coincidentally, I thought it was kind of odd the Patriots went for 2. I get at some point they were going to have to go for 2. I personally would have preferred the extra point because then it's definitely a 1-possession game. And if you hold them, then, okay, well, now you go for 2 because that ties the game. As opposed to, well, they miss it, and now it's a 2-possession game because you're down 9. You're chasing points instead of being within closer striking range. Tough team to watch. hard to really see, the light at the end of the tunnel big picture. But again, I mean, Drake May certainly looks like he's got all the talent to be the guy. Hopefully they can build around him. And, it certainly seems like even though they drafted Polk, that, wide receiver is probably just as big of a need on this team moving forward as the tackle position is.
Yeah. Coming out of the London game, I feel like we all felt like it was a winnable game.
Yes.
Not necessarily were we going to say, it's definitely going to be a win, but it was certainly a winnable game. I felt like Drake May played well. I think he, for the first two starts of a rookie, he's done everything we could have hoped for. Especially considering the O-line still sucks. The run game is non-existent, completely non-existent. That just makes the passing games tough. And the weapons are mediocre, and yet May is kind of making them look a lot better than they really are. In terms of Jalen Polk, you guys, Zach, you kind of hit it on the head where, like, you're talking a big game, you're making things worse for yourself. I wasn't huge on Polk coming in. I know Ben and both of you guys were a little higher on him than I was. I still think he can be solid. I don't think he'll ever be a 1, but I still think he could be solid. I'm not overly worried about his whole situation. I think he'll figure it out and improve. In terms of the Patriots as a whole this weekend, the run game was embarrassing, and that's really like a nice way to put it. They're missing some key pieces in the run game. I mean, Peppers is one of your best run defenders. Bentley is your best run defender. Barmore, obviously, up the middle would help as well. But in the end, like, you can't be as bad as they've been against the run. It's pretty embarrassing. I do think Mayo's comment about being soft is being so over-exaggerated by the media. That being said, he deserves it because of how the play is for the Patriots. Him calling the team soft wouldn't be that big of a deal if, like, the Patriots were falling to 3-4 instead of 1-6. You know what I mean? So, like, the wheels have fallen off over the last couple weeks, and so when he comes out and makes a comment like this, it's going to create even bigger headlines. And then obviously now you got the Belichick effect, where, anytime he says something about the Patriots, it's going to be front page news. Belichick said this about Mayo. Belichick said this about the Patriots. His comment obviously made things a little bit worse. But in terms of the 7 weeks into the season, the seat is as warm as you could have possibly imagined. Worst case scenario for Mayo.
Yep.
100%.
I don't think that we could have predicted a scenario where, 7 weeks into the season, we would say Mayo's seat is as warm as it is. Now, I still don't think he'll be fired unless there's some catastrophic, just horrible, horrible end to the season. But, things are as bad as we could have predicted for him personally and his reputation and how things have been playing. And, what are you guys' thoughts on kind of where he is in terms of a hot seat? Do you anticipate, have your feelings changed about your belief in him and if you think he'll be fired?
Things have changed in terms of him. I mean, when he was hired by Kraft, I wasn't necessarily like for or against it. I, honestly didn't really have much of an opinion. I just kind of trusted maybe blindly in Kraft to make the right decision. He had been, a player for the Patriots, almost like Red Sox. For the Patriots, he was a captain, obviously played the Super Bowl. So I trusted, that he knew him enough to make the right decision. But in terms of his leadership, I think that it was very overblown by Kraft. I think that what he's been doing and kind of where the locker room is now, it feels like he's losing, if not lost it already. Especially when he made the comments. I mean, yeah, I get that the media is probably a little bit overblowing the soft comments, but yeah, players like Jonathan Jones, who, if he's not your most tenured, he's he's definitely up there among the most tenured players on your team, basically coming out and just flat out disagreeing with the comments immediately afterwards. You have Bill basically saying that they're the exact same team for the most part, and yet they're much, much worse in the run defense. So at some point it comes back to the coach and what sort of environment he's leading. Like, yes, we've all known he's much more of a player's coach than Bill was. But at what point does it become a detriment to the overall fabric of your team? And I think it's showing that it's not what it was, when we kind of took that as a positive before, but now we're seeing where Bill's leadership actually shown through. So I don't know that he's going to be fired. I do think that I was listening to Zolak and Bertrand today, and Zol kind of brought up a good point. He's like, I don't think he's going to be fired, but I do think that they'll bring in some more senior leadership, kind of similar to like the Celtics did with Joe Mazzulla after the first season. Because right now they have Ben McAdoo, who, if he's your senior advisor, you have a lot more issues than really you think. The guy's an idiot. So I think they'll bring in some other people. Ben McAdoo's a fucking putz, dude. But if you're going to bring in anybody, I think they bring in some senior leadership to help with some decision-making, help kind of bring the culture back. But yeah, no, I agree. I think if there was ever a time to be calling for his job, I think it's after a performance, a first half like this, and a performance like on Sunday, and a comment like the soft comment. So I agree that the seat is warming up, might even be hot, depending on who you are. But I personally don't think he'll be fired at this point. But we'll see what Kraft does.
Fair enough. Ben, how about you?
So I guess to answer the initial part of the question, because I'm kind of with Zach on this, my personal feelings have changed in terms of like, what do I think of Gerard Mayo as a coach? And that could have gone either way. I certainly was feeling optimistic that they had picked him. I thought, smart guy, ties to the organization, young enough that I felt like he could connect with players, but he was still a tough-nosed middle linebacker and a captain of the defense for 10 years here. So I thought that would carry a little bit more weight than I think it did. It's kind of tough to feel like he does anything particularly well. And I say that a little loosely because they're 1-6, nothing's going right. And you don't see, like, there's some inconsistencies, right, with the things that he says, things that he does. So it's kind of really hard to understand what's going well when the team's doing so poorly. Greg Bedard said today on Felger and Maz, based on his connections with the team, that there's speculation that Mayo may not make it past this season. It seemed like it was more speculation than actual, like ears on the ground or hearing rumblings that if things don't meet certain specifications that Kraft is going to fire at the end of the year. But having said that, I think that based on how things have gone, certainly not heading in a positive direction. I think that, how things have looked, like if they don't, and I don't know what the win total is, but if they don't win like 5 or 6 games at the end of the year and things just continue to not trend in the right direction, like I could easily see him being fired. I wasn't anti-Gerard Mayo from the very beginning, although I thought the process is what rubbed me the wrong way, was that, and there's been conflicting reports, right? Like Gerard Mayo they hired him after the 2018 season, I believe, as the inside linebackers coach, which made total sense, right? Like, again, captain for 10 years, Super Bowl champion. He earned the right to be in that position. And then he gets some interviews 2 years ago, doesn't get a job. And then last year he starts to take interviews and then pulls his name out of the ring and then essentially agrees to stay on staff. So the speculation goes, okay, like, well, what was promised to Gerard Mayo to make him not take defensive coordinator interviews? And I believe he had 1 or 2 head coaching interviews lined up. I know he had one was it Carolina? He had lined up, and then there was speculation that he was going to interview for the Denver job. But that never came to fruition. I think he withdrew his name from potential candidacy. And obviously we found out that Kraft went to Mayo and said, like, when Bill's done, you're the next head coach. I didn't love the process because it basically took yourself out of the running to go hire somebody like a Mike Vrabel, right? Who has the experience, who I think you could have gotten away with an Alex Van Pelt as an offensive coordinator and a DeMarcus Covington as a defensive coordinator and, a rookie special teams coordinator and a new offensive line coach. Like, it goes on down the line. If you have experience as the head coach, it's really tough to have brand new leadership across the board at every position when you have a rookie head coach. That's really, really tough, right? Like DeMarcus Covington, decent coach. They're riddled with injuries. So at least to me, I kind of give Covington a little bit of a pass because as a coordinator, he's really like his personnel is really hurting. No Bentley, no Barmore, and then like the depth guys beyond that, behind them, not super great. But so he gets a little bit of a pass in my opinion. But again, never called a defense before. Alex Van Pelt never been a play caller, never been like a full offensive coordinator. And then you hand a rookie head coach guys who have really never run offensive schemes before or defensive schemes before. So like that's tricky. So I feel like while I say that I think Gerard Mayo's seat is pretty warm, and I think that you could see him go at the end of the year if things really go sideways, I don't think that Kraft did him any favors. Well, not really Kraft, because obviously Mayo's the one filling out his staff. I don't think the organization did him any favors by giving him the supporting cast he has. Like Zach said, like Ben McAdoo should never touch an offense for the rest of his life. Like there's no reason you should ever hire him. Now, granted, I understand, I guess there was some speculation that when he was in Buffalo, he was like, I really want, or not Buffalo, when he was in New York, he was like, I really, really want Josh Allen, and he was overruled. So he certainly theoretically has an eye for talent at certain positions. But like to Zach's point, and I think you said this beautifully, if he's your senior offensive advisor, you've got bigger problems on your hands that led you to this point. So I don't think Mayo's in a great situation to succeed to begin with, but he's not doing himself any favors either. Hopefully they can turn it around. He called the team soft. But in my opinion, if your team is soft, it means that the coaching is allowing them to be soft. So that starts from the top.
100%. Yeah, well, I think that's part of why I felt like the whole conversation got a little bit overblown, because he did, in addition to saying soft, say it starts with me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, and obviously, like media-wise, headline-wise, story-wise, they're not going to push that part. They're going to push, he called the team soft. So that's why I'm kind of a little bit, wary of thinking that's kind of just being a little bit overblown. And maybe inside the locker room, it's not as much as an issue as we think it is. It could be. I'm certainly not saying, like, there's certainly probably some team players that are having some issues right now, whether it's Polk. We saw Osborne make a comment or a post or whatever like that. There's speculation that the team was out late the night before the game in London.
I didn't hear that.
Nothing's confirmed by any means, but there's trickle crumb. What's the best word?
Breadcrumbs.
There is a breadcrumb trail. There's a crumb trail that Demario Douglas didn't have food poisoning, and he was just hungover as shit.
Oh, awesome.
I'll say that just because he says he had food poisoning. I think it was Christian Gonzalez was asked today on WEI and asked if they had any issues with the food in London. Gonzalez, I'm paraphrasing, basically said, no, we can move on to the next question. And just kind of like pushed it off to the side, saying like, I don't want to talk about that. Yeah. Kendrick Bourne made a comment about, what we're eating or what we're doing the night, the night before game, stuff like that. So, I don't know if it'll ever get proven or reported that they were out, whatever it may be, but they need to focus. And I think it comes down to Mayo. And this is where, and boy, did I have this conversation yesterday. What qualifies a player to be a coach to be a good head coach, or what qualifies him to be a head coach? In the conversation,
calling skills.
Shut your mouth. The conversation
Zach,
was.
Did you see the back and forth, Zach?
What is it?
Did you see the back and forth Matt had with this guy?
Probably bits and pieces of it. I don't think I followed the whole thing.
It was a gold mine. That's why I said offensive play calling.
No, he basically was like he said if you don't have play calling experience, you're not qualified to be a head coach. And so I listed off numerous coaches who had no experience prior to calling plays on offense or defense and have turned out to be head coaches. And then I listed numerous coaches who had extensive play calling experience and absolutely sucked, cough, cough, Josh McDaniels and Matt Patricia at being a coach.
The other side being Sean McVay. Sean McVay never called plays before he became the head coach of LA. He just came up through an offensive system and was
he was the OC in Washington. What did he call plays?
I don't remember him calling plays, but
I don't know if he could. But either way,
who was the head coach in Washington when he was the OC?
Was it John Gruden?
Let's see. He was
not John. Is it John?
2014 to 2016. That would have been Ron Rivera.
Oh,
I believe. Hold on. You guys can move on. I'll look this
Anyways, I basically went on a tangent saying like what makes a good head coach is being able to control. We got to realize that these are 63 grown men. They're not kids. They're not college play. They're 63. No, actually, there's more than that. It's a 16-team practice squad, right? So, what is it? 69 players, I think. Grown men in the locker room. You got tons of coaches. You got tons of personalities. You need to be able to handle that. You need to be able to run a system. Obviously, you need to be a smart mind. You got to be able to handle personalities. You got to be able to lead a team, lead an organization. All that trumps being able to be a play caller. Like, do we think Bill Belichick wouldn't have been good as a coach if he didn't call defensive plays before that? No. Of course he's probably still would have. And so, I don't want to sidetrack too much on that conversation, but the qualifications for a head coach go so far beyond play calling, so far beyond. It's very low on my list. It's just a bonus. Like, it's a bonus if your head coach is let's say an offensive coordinator and he's going to call plays, so you don't have to necessarily worry about your OC leaving, right? So if like Ben Johnson gets a job, like, that team doesn't have to worry about their OC and their play caller leaving for a new job. The Rams are okay each year, even if their OC leaves, because McVay, runs the offense. But Mayo himself, like, qualification-wise, he was qualified. I don't care what people say. You play in the league for 8 years, and you have 13 years in the league under what many of these people who believe Belichick is God, working and playing and coaching under the God of Bill Belichick. And he's not he's not qualified to do it. It was just kind of baffling to me. But, it really comes down to Mayo if he fails, it's simply because he didn't properly lead the team. And we talked about that he has, more of a player-friendly mentality and stuff like that. It seems to the fact that, like, players are taking advantage of that. Mm-hmm. He needs to tighten down. He needs to tighten the ship and say, I don't give a flying F what has happened the last, 7 weeks. This is how it's going to be going forward. And if you have an issue with that, let me know. And if you have an issue with that, get the F off this team. Because the Patriots are going down a wrong path. And so unless Mayo steps up and takes control of the situation, which, again, I still believe in him. I still believe in Mayo because I think he's a smart guy, and I think he can be a good head coach. But I think up until this point, he has simply not been good enough. And if things continue to go down this path, then he's going to put himself in a situation where he might get himself fired. But I'm still kind of waiting and see. A lot of people want him fired already. With the way what you guys would kind of attribute, like, we got to remember this is an entire staff of like people doing a bunch of new things that they haven't done before. So could that result in the disaster that it has been? Yes, but could that mean we need to give it more time? I also do think that could be part of it.
It's a catch-22. I mean, if you fire everyone and bring in someone else, then you're essentially doing what you did to Mac Jones and having another OC, another playbook for Drake May to learn next year, and then you're kind of doing the same thing. So that's why I don't think he'll be fired. I don't know what's going to happen, but like I'd be very wary of firing him if you think that's what needs to be done, because then who is that person going to bring in that you hire next, and is that going to further mess up the quarterback?
We also have to think of the Kraft effect, where like he's made these comments. Oh, I picked Mayo to be my next head coach 5 years ago. Oh, I knew from day one. Oh, I pre-planned him to be the successor to Belichick. Like, he made some big statements, like, I trust my gut. Like, I just go with this. Like, I feel confident, blah, 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 blah. Like, I just have a hard time seeing Kraft say, like, oh, 1 year, it's not working, we're done. It's over.
Yeah.
I think that his ego will push it at the most. And I don't even want to say ego, because, like, if you truly believe in a guy, firing after 1 year is kind of premature anyways.
Yeah. I mean, the one thing I will say, just to play devil's advocate for the sake of having an argument, is, and I'm not saying this is like it's a bad thing, but Kraft he gives off the impression he doesn't want to be wrong, which is why, at least publicly, it seems like there's been a lot of throwing Belichick under the bus, that their most recent failures it's Bill did this, Bill didn't do that, Bill should have done this better. I was fine with Brady walking, Bill built the team, blah, blah, blah. Right. And, and to an extent, like, I think that there's certainly some truth to that. I don't think Kraft is stupid enough to just blatantly flat out lie about everything. But I could also see that if Mayo's not working, that he wouldn't want to be proven wrong by firing Mayo, to where I could see them overhauling their coordinator situation. Because I think, going back to my original point, if you give somebody like Gerard Mayo somebody who has the experience running an offensive system and calling offensive plays, somebody who has experience scheming and calling a defense, which I think Covington was a little bit more heavy-handed in the offensive system than Alex Van Pelt was in Cleveland. I don't know how much he actually built that offense, but I could see them being like, look, we can't, like Drake May, we can't have a simplistic offense. We can't, not that we want a complex offense, but I mean, they had a ton of success with somebody like a Josh McDaniels. And I'm not saying bring Josh back by any stretch, but bring in somebody who has the offensive play calling experience, who has creative plays that can create situations on offense where, like, the Demario Douglases of the world can be running crossing patterns with pick plays, scheme plays to get him open, scheming other players, and then letting Drake May use his natural athletic ability to let plays develop and extend a play and make those plays happen. I could see him going down that road, where he still believes it's
easy fire. Like, I don't think that they have really no attachment to AVP.
No, I think that at least for this year, I don't think, and I truly believe this, I don't think that they foresaw the struggles of Jacoby Brissett happening for this long at this stage of the season. I really think that was kind of a package deal. That, like, if we bring in Jacoby Brissett, it's not a bad idea to bring in the guy that Jacoby Brissett learned the system he was in for the last couple of years in Cleveland. So it was an easy transition because he could run an offense he already knows. He wasn't going to have to relearn an offense. And as long as he kept the team afloat, they could develop Drake May for as long as possible. I don't think, again, and this goes back to the whole reactionary response, I think that part of it was reactionary, where Jacoby Brissett is like, is so bad that they just can't do it anymore. That they're like, we're comfortable with where Drake May is right now. Would we have liked to see him develop more on the sideline longer? Sure. But I think that it made sense to have Alex Van Pelt run the offense that Jacoby Brissett was driving the ship for. Now that it's Drake May, and Jacoby Brissett's time in New England, barring a Drake May injury, is relegated to the bench, I think it would make sense for them to try to figure out and identify who's going to be an offensive coordinator, or who is a guy in a Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan system, a Ben Johnson of sorts. I don't think Ben Johnson's going to want a head coaching job if he doesn't.
He's not taking.
If he doesn't stay in Detroit, he's going to be a head coach somewhere.
Yeah,
but somebody like that, like who's the next guy who?
I'll tell you Ben
Johnson.
I'll tell you the answer to that, and it's the guy I guess what was their second option after Zach Robinson, and it's Nick Caley. He reportedly said no to coming here. So he's
still in LA, correct? He's the tight end for the Rams.
No, he got promoted to the pass game coordinator to take over for Zach Robinson. So, we have to look at it in a reality of, if I'm Nick Caley, what am I considering? And it was, do I stay in LA where I'm getting a promotion, where I'm in a system that grows offensive coordinators on trees type of thing. Or I could go to New England. Yes, I could get this offensive coordinator job, but it's a brand new head coach. I don't know who my quarterback is. I don't know who my weapons are. I don't know anything that's going to happen there. Do I want that job? Supposedly, Kraft offered him a lot of money. That's what was reported. He said no. Will things change this offseason? I don't know. I will say the fact that you have your quarterback theoretically should change the attractiveness to an OC tremendously.
Yes,
tremendous. Like, obviously that is so far and away like the priority. Never mind the fact that, like, if they happen to be in the Caley market again this offseason, Elliott Wolf can say, hey, like, I know you didn't want to come here last year, but now we have our quarterback, and we're going to spend on a receiver, and we're going to draft a tackle, like, in the first round. Like, we're going to add major pieces. All of a sudden, the offensive coordinator job for the Patriots looks pretty attractive, because if you can take Drake May and make him a, superstar, you bet your ass a team that is looking for a new head coach and is, drafting a new quarterback is going to say, hey, I want the guy that helped turn Drake May into a superstar. So will it be more attractive? I don't know, but that's going to be pretty high on the list for them this offseason if Alex Van Pelt is out the door.
Yeah, and I think that it's not necessarily an indictment on Alex Van Pelt. I just think that the system he was running in Cleveland with the offenses that he had, it's not conducive to somebody who has Drake May's ability. I get that Deshaun Watson is a prime Deshaun Watson in terms of skill set. Like, I could see Drake May being something along those lines. Good passer, good athletic ability with some mobility, good scramble ability. Like, I could see that kind of skill set. Now, granted, Deshaun Watson may have played his last snap in Cleveland. But
they ain't getting it. I don't know what they're gonna do with them, but
I mean, he just may want to sit on the bench. I don't think so, but he just may. I mean, he doesn't look like he wants to play anymore. He can just sit on the bench and collect his dollars and not risk injury. So, but anyway, so you look at somebody who has a creative offensive system, or is at least a pass game coordinator. I think AVP gets fired. I would say if you can identify the next Ben Johnson or Zach Robinson or Bobby Slowick type guy, I think that given what the Patriots have for offensive players, and assuming, sacrifice a goat or whatever you do, pray to whatever God, the Patriots land a top wide receiver in this draft coming up in April, that if they could find somebody with a creative mindset that, I think that somebody with that skill set could turn this offense around pretty quickly, assuming that they do free agency in the draft well, wide receiver, build from the inside out and get skill players. Somebody with a creative mind, I think, could have fun with this offense.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have a lot better idea, obviously, of where the wide receiver room is, 3 months from now. Obviously, 7 games isn't a huge sample size for rookies. So we'll see what Polk gives you over the last 10 games. I do think
he needs to trade. He needs to make sure he's actually using his hands, like hands and not feet.
I know. I think Baker is going to start seeing some run. I think that they need to give him some run, in because you got to kind of start to wonder and see what you have in him, and you have to know going into the offseason, like, what exactly we need at this wide receiver position. Obviously, tackle is going to be the top priority, but like,
I don't even know if I agree with that at this point.
Yeah, I think you have to. You have to get a left tackle.
I
mean, we have to remember. We have to like recognize.
Well, I guess it depends. I guess it depends on what they're doing for. Are you talking in general or the draft?
In general.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought we were talking about the draft. Yeah, in general, yes.
Yeah, I mean, draft. We don't have to get into specifics for the draft, but like, this seems like there's going to be a higher end of wide receivers than tackles.
Yes,
depending on where they draft. But again, like that's I'm not going to dive deep into. We'll have plenty of time to talk what the Patriots should do in their first round pick.
Trade back from the number 1 overall pick, a team, and then draft somebody.
Yeah. So I not to kind of go around in circles with the whole situation, but like, tackle is going to be obviously their biggest need as a whole. And I would say there's probably still about an 85% chance that Mayo and Wolf are still the two guys in charge. Come what are we in October? Like 4 months from now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that in a vacuum, I think Wolf has a better chance of staying in his job than Mayo does in his. But I would say that odds are neither one of them will be gone.
Yeah, right now I would probably put about 85%. Like it only being 85% is rather low for 7 games into a season. That number could get lower. It certainly can get lower over the next month or two, but they need some type of jolt into this locker room. I will say this. How this team comes out against the Jets this weekend will tell us, I will say, everything about what the rest of the season is going to look like. They don't need to win, but if they come out flat on their ass and get their ass handed to again,
that's bad.
Mm-hmm. It is a very, very, very bad look. Bad look for Mayo, bad look for the future of this team. We can start saying, I think, and again, this is a spectrum, so it's tough to kind of say exactly, but let's say at the bottom of the barrel of like what you could expect this weekend, if they get their ass handed to and they look flat and shit once again, it's going to, heads are going to start turning and there's going to be some real big question marks. That being said, they could do the opposite. And I think we all kind of hope it's the opposite, where they rally around and they, again, they don't have to win, but they play a good competitive football game against what is a good but not great football team.
Yeah. You think the Jets are good?
I said, I mean, they got talent.
Talented, I was going to say. No,
I was going to say. I was like, so it's funny.
The fact that they're 2-5. That's
so 7 games into the season hilarious. Last year with Zach Wilson at quarterback, they were 4-3.
The fact that they're 2-5 is hilarious. Yeah. Like that is one of the silver linings to this awful Patriots season is the fact that Aaron Rodgers is 2-5 with the Jets.
Yeah,
and they just lost with Davante Adams.
Yeah,
I mean, I heard this on 98.5. They were talking about like how much of a difference would Davante Adams make when it came to like the New York Jets, and Felger hilariously goes, "Well, it'll look cooler, but they're still not going to win."
Yeah,
like you'll get more.
There was a joke that if the Jets lose the next,
but they're not going to win.
If the Jets lose the next 2 weeks, there was a joke that Adams is going to request a trade again.
He probably he can't because it'll be past the trade deadline. But that'd be.
He already came out and was like, "Oh, this is what this team is. This is what this team's been the entire year." And everyone's like, "You've been here for like 45 minutes. How are you already?" Like, you can't make fun of this team.
Chase, there's no shot Mayo resigns, but I get the notion of it.
So, and for the record, the Patriots are 7-point underdogs at home against the Jets this weekend, which really means they're 10-point underdogs because you get 3 points for just being at home.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. But all right, let's shift to some Boston Celtics. Their banner night starts in about 18 minutes, so that's about how much longer we have on tonight. But anyways, the Boston Celtics defend their title. The banner goes up into the rafters. I don't know if you boys saw, but the Dallas Mavericks raised a banner today. Their Western Conference Championship banner. They said another one in the rafters or something like that today on social media. I'm sure you can imagine that had a very positive reaction from
the Colts AFC finalists banner from a couple of years ago.
Yeah, the AFC finalist banner I feel like is funnier than.
Oh yeah, well the thing about the Mavericks though is that raising being the Western Conference champion it makes sense because if you win your conference, you're going to raise a banner. Whether you win, like the Celtics, I don't think the Celtics historically they've never raised banners to represent conference championships. But a team I feel like that's at least a logical thing to do. Like if you look at other sports venues, they have
AFC finalists.
that was pretty bad. Like, hey, yeah, we got to the AFC championship game. Whee! But
when you don't go to the finals every year, like the Celtics have.
Yeah, dude, if you can't even win your conference,
I can at least
don't be putting up a banner.
I can at least understand hanging a conference championship. Like the Red Sox have how many pennants in and outside of Fenway Park representing their American League championships? Like other teams do.
I'm fine with if you win your conference putting up some smaller banner or
it's funny. It doesn't you'd have to have I think it's a copy of Madden 2022 because I used to have one before I upgraded to 24. And in the video game, the AFC finalist banner is in the video game.
No way.
Is it?
Yeah, if you find a copy of Madden 22 and you can play it, go play a game at Lucas Oil Stadium. And when it pans around in the pregame, you see the AFC finalist banner.
I haven't turned on my PlayStation in 4 years.
That's because you need an Xbox, buddy. Come on.
I used to be filthy at MLB The Show. I'm convinced if I went and played online, like I used to play all the time online in college, I would lose probably 25-0.
It's accurate.
It's a skill. It becomes almost like a skill to be a good gamer. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it would be probably maybe 2 years ago. I turned it on once and I played a game of the show and I was like, holy fuck, am I bad at this now?
It's not like riding a bike.
Yeah, and I felt super old doing it, but
we digress. Anyways, back to the banner.
Yeah, back to raising the banner.
I teed it up nicely for you. You're welcome.
The banner is raised tonight. Banner 18. I'll just start off. Are they repeating or no?
I mean, if you're a gambling man, you would say no. Like a smart man takes the field. But I think if you look at
that's smart.
I mean, that's fair. That's why the house wins because everyone's idiots on gambling sites and at the tables. No, I think if you look at the dynamic of the NBA, especially in the Eastern Conference, where after the Celtics and the Knicks, is there really a team that's going to challenge the Celtics? Realistically, assuming the Celtics are healthy, is there really a team besides the Knicks that could give them a hard time? Probably
Milwaukee.
Not, huh?
Milwaukee with the healthy Giannis and Lillard,
but they're old.
You can't rule them.
Isn't Middleton hurt again this year? Or he's starting out not.
Yeah, he's got bum knees or ankles. He's done.
Yeah, you figured too though, right? If you're the Celtics, again, it's opening night, and we're forecasting 8 months from now. In all likelihood, the Celtics are not going to have to go through Milwaukee and New York to get to an NBA Finals. They'd probably only have to go through one of them, assuming because those three teams are probably your top 3 seeds in the NBA. It's unless the Celtics aren't the 1 seed, they probably don't have to go through both of those teams. I mean, I think the easy answer is no, but I think that to go back to my point, just based on the dynamic of the Eastern Conference, I think that they have as good a chance as anybody to repeat as we've seen in recent memory. Like, look at
since the Warriors did it.
Yeah. I mean, the Warriors had arguably more talent at the end than the Celtics do now. And I don't think.
Know, maybe,
I mean, you're talking about prime Steph Curry, Kevin Durant, Klay Thompson, like those three, like.
Yeah. Oh no, I'm not saying it's like the Celtics certainly have a lot more talent. Like when a fully healthy Celtics team goes out there, it's one of the best top sixes we've seen in decades.
Yeah, right now, they're still the best team in the NBA in my opinion. In terms of talent, depth, and I replied to James Stewart on X because he posted what I think it was James Stewart, what your expectations were of the Celtics this season. So I'll parlay it into that. Is I would expect this team, again, assuming health, to win a minimum of 62 games. And at a bare minimum, they should make the Eastern Finals. I mean, they've won a title. They've won a title, right? So it's not like a year ago today. A year ago, we would have said it's NBA Finals or bust because that's what they haven't done that yet. They went to the finals in what year did they lose to Golden State? 21? 22. So they lost in NBA Finals. Yeah, that's right. They lost in 22, and then they lose in 7 games to Miami in 2023.
Yeah.
So they've won the title. So they've already done the thing that they hadn't done yet. So I think that it's hard to say that the expectation is to repeat because we haven't seen a repeat NBA champion in 6 years. 17, 18 Golden State Warriors were the last team to repeat. So it's hard to say that that's the expectation, but I think that if they don't get to the Eastern Conference Finals, that would be a failure. So I would say, Porzingis is out to start the year, but you would say 60 plus wins, and they've got to get at least to the Eastern Finals, to say that they had a respectable answer to last year's title run.
I think you're being too light on them, to be honest with you. And I think the best way to describe are they going to repeat is the basic question is, what is a successful season? And there's only one answer, and that is a NBA championship. There is no scenario in this, barring catastrophic injuries, Tatum tears his ACL or something like that. Yeah. But, there is nothing other than a title that will be deemed a successful Celtics season. Shams kind of put it pretty straightforward today, and it's for the next 2 to 3 years, the Celtics will be head over heels, clear-cut favorites to win the NBA championship because they have far and away the best roster. That's kind of the best way to put it, for them. Without diving too deep into the specifics, they need to be NBA championships again. 8 months from now, July, June, when is the finals? Something like that.
Yeah.
And if they're not, it's a failure. If they lose in the Eastern Conference Finals to the Knicks, we're not going to be on this pod, again, barring major injuries. We're not going to be on this pod and saying, yeah, well, they lost to the Knicks in 6 games, but, I think it was a solid season. We're going to say, no, it was a failure.
Yeah.
They should have beat the Knicks, and whoever they face in the finals, again, we'll see where things are, but odds are they should have beat that team. So that's kind of the best way to put it, where their talent level is so far ahead that anything other than a title is not a successful season. Therefore, I think they do repeat. And if they don't, it's a failure. It's kind of the best way to put it.
I just think it's hard to say it's a failure if they don't repeat. That's such a hard thing to do in sports. In a vacuum, the team should win. but it's so hard to repeat because
if this was the NFL, I would agree.
You have the target on your back.
I know, but if this was the NFL, I would agree. If this was baseball, I would agree. If this was hockey, I would certainly agree.
Well, baseball's such a
basketball,
long season.
I know, but basketball, the talent discrepancy, like you go into a season in the NBA, and there are like 5 to 7 teams on average that you like, okay, you have a chance. Like you have somewhat of a chance. Going into this last season, it was the Celtics and maybe 2 or 3 other teams. Like that was like the reasonable. Like you just said, in the East, like it's the Knicks and who? Like who? Maybe Milwaukee. Like you could I don't know, maybe a healthy Miami because they're just notorious assholes, to play against. But in the NBA where like talent prevails so much, I don't think the repeat expectations isn't what it is in other sports. So I just view it differently.
Yeah, I mean the tricky part though is that in the history of the NBA, there's only been 13 ever.
It's not easy. Like it's certainly not easy.
But like, okay, so like, did the Warriors have a failure of a season the year that they lost to the Cavs in 7 games in between winning 3 out of 4 NBA titles? Like, is that considered a failure because they lost in 7 games in the NBA Finals?
They let up a 3-1 lead.
I mean, I understand that. Like they let up a 3-1 lead, but like, I just feel like
it was a failure because they not only the fact that they were up 3-1, but they should have won. And now again, I will say in their scenario, it's slightly different because you lost to prime LeBron James and Kyrie Irving. And like the losing to prime LeBron James is different where like the Celtics aren't going to play anyone, have any matchup where again, fully healthy, assuming that they are not the clear-cut best team on the basketball court. Yeah. And you could say, I guess you could kind of argue that with Golden State too, but like, again, we're talking about like prime LeBron. Like prime LeBron is arguably the best player ever. I know you won't say that because you hate him, but
it has nothing to do with how I feel about it. It's just true.
All right, fair enough.
No, I have a hard time saying that the Celtics will repeat too, just because there is 30 other teams and only 5 of which are.
I'm taking the Detroit Pistons.
Doable. Yeah, the Pistons aren't going anywhere, and neither are like, I don't know, pick a team. But like the talent disparity is probably the worst in any of the 4 major sports. Where there's like it's very top heavy with who is the what NBA contender or
that, and just like talent prevails more than anything in the NBA.
Yes,
but the last time we've seen a team have this much talent and depth was probably those Warriors who did go back to back. So like, there is an argument to be said about them not really having anybody in their path, and if it is, it's probably not going to be anybody from the East except for maybe the Knicks. But we'll see how Kat and Brunson work out together. The other thing
if I ask you guys, if they lose to the Knicks in 7, do you think are you going to call it a successful season?
No,
depends on how they lose in 7. Like, did they play 7 competitive games that came down to the wire against a team that added talent at the deadline to close a gap?
I don't know. Let's just say like a normal competitive 7-game series that like
the roster is better than theirs. You should win that.
The Knicks won. So like we're not going to look at that when there's going to be no scenario in an Eastern Conference Finals loss where we say it was a successful season. So
I mean, unless you're talking about like a Knicks team that goes out and acquires somebody that basically makes the talent on both rosters even.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just talking like,
and that's a huge speculation. Like as currently constructed, I would, my statement was assuming variables. I mean, as rosters are currently constructed and assuming health, no, short of going back to the NBA Finals is a failure. I think it's like once you get there, fine. Like, I don't think losing in the NBA Finals the year after you won one is a failure, unless you get blown out in a sweep, right? It all depends on how you lose. But I would say, short of getting to the NBA Finals as team rosters are currently constructed, would be not okay.
Yeah. All right. Let's finish this up here with our state your takes. Ben, I know you said you got it. Was it a non-Patriots one today?
Yes,
Or
that
a
is
non-sports one?
No, non-Patriots. I
Okay.
feel like I've
All
gone with the Patriots for like 8 weeks in a row.
All right, hit me. Let's hear it.
So I'm going to go with just going with the Celtics theme. It is opening night. Jason Tatum will be your NBA MVP in 2024, 2025. Current betting odds have him at a plus 1,500 to be the NBA MVP this year. That is good for 5th behind Luka, Jokic, Shai, Giannis, and Anthony Edwards, in that order. I think, the monkey is off his back, so to speak. He's done everything short of winning a finals, a East Finals, and a Finals MVP. The only thing he hasn't done, big picture wise, is win the MVP award. He doesn't need to focus on winning the NBA championship anymore. He's already done it, and I think that he's primed for, his best season. And I think that he'll ride that, and Tatum will be your NBA most valuable player.
All right, I love it, Zach.
I mean, he has the motivation after the Olympics. I will go Patriots from my 7th in a row. But I will say that Jalen Polk will be a healthy scratch this week coming up. Give him a week off or so, which means that Javon Baker will be. Is this his first game? Will this be his first game?
No,
Yes.
he was active. No, he was active
Was he?
before.
But
I think
did
he
he-
played like one snap or something like that.
right. Okay.
Well, I was going to say in a 2-part. This will be, as a result, Baker's first game, but
Yeah.
he will be off the inactives list this year.
There seems, based off of Osborne's post, it seemed like Baker was planning to be active, and he was still sick, so they had Osborne be active instead. But that's speculation. For me, and I said this one to Ben earlier. This is truly just a gut feeling, and I'm probably going to be dead wrong. But I think the Patriots come out and upset the Jets this weekend. It's a little bit of an optimistic viewpoint, most certainly. But my gut tells me that the team isn't giving up on Mayo, and the team is going to come out with something to prove, to not so much just say, hey, we're a good team, because, they're not. But it's, hey, we're not bums. And we're at that stage in the season already, which is sad. But my gut just tells me the Patriots will come out and upset the New York Jets. And I'm going to go with the score of 23-20 Patriots.
So they win and score more points than they have all year.
I mean, 23 points isn't exactly a lot.
They haven't scored more than 20 points once or twice.
All right, I know, but
that's what I'm saying. They're gonna score the most points. I like it. That's why it's called a state your take. I like the bold stance.
23 isn't exactly a lot, but all right. Until next week,
against Jacksonville.
Until next week, let's go watch the Celtics raise the banner. This is our first raise the banner since this podcast has become a thing. I'm just saying. Many more to come.
It only took us a year and 3 months.
Yeah. All right.
For the name to manifest itself into reality.
All right. Goodbye. See you next week.
Later, guys.
Go Pats. Go Celtics.
Pats. See you guys.
See ya.